Hello, my students, and this is my recording and overview for Learning Plan 5, Chapter 5. It's this chapter is now on building improvement plans. I think one of the ideas about teams, and probably the driving force behind teams, is that there's some kind of problem that needs to be analyzed, assessed, researched, in some kind of scientific methodology, and ultimately whether you choose the five-step process of improvement or problem solving or the seven-step problem solving method, either way, you eventually come up with some ideas to improve the situation. So it makes sense at this point in the curriculum to move you along to getting to the point of building an improvement plan. This is what the problem was when we assessed it. This is what we figure is the cause analysis. This is what we're looking at in terms of repairs, reparations. This is what we think we can do to improve our current situation. Now, in most of these teams, you don't have the authority to make a decision. You are more like a consultant. You're more like an advisor, a trusted advisor. The senior management may not have the time to go to the level that your team can go to really analyze the true causes of the problem. And I don't know if you remember, but only a few weeks ago we talked about getting back to the true causes. What are the true causes of this issue? And as interesting as it might be, these are not often what comes to mind right off the top. So that's what this chapter, this learning plan is about. They talk about it here on page 1 of chapter 5. What will you find here? The five-step method of problem solving and improving daily work, the seven-step method to problem solving, which we've talked about a little bit before, the 16 improvement strategies, which I think is very interesting, and then some key ingredients for successful improvement efforts. So that's basically what we get into in this chapter. As I give you the overview, here again, what I would suggest to you is you don't read this chapter word for word, page by page, paragraph by paragraph. What you do is just sort of look at the uh, highlights, look at the bold headings. And most people didn't realize that there was a five-step plan and a seven-step plan. Well, on page 2 of Learning Plan 5, Chapter 5, they get into the basic differences of them. In truth, it doesn't really matter which one you pick. It's which one works for you and your team, for the needs that you have. So that's sort of how we discuss that. You can dig down deeper into that. I almost nobody, including myself, until I got deeper into this class, I had no idea what DMAIC was. I I never heard of it before. But as you can see, it stands for the 5 steps in the Six Sigma improvement approach: define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. You see, these are all variations of the theme of problem-solving methods, or as this chapter says, improvement plans. All right, so there's a nice little graph on the top of page 3, which just shows problem solving and improving daily work. Problem solving, improving daily work. And this is a cycle that continues to go on with the use of cross-functional teams. So it's all good. Now it gets into these issues of improvement strategies and general approaches and how they fit together. I think that's really pretty interesting. LP5, page 5. On page 7, it talks about the 5-step method of managing and improving daily work, which I like it. You can see it's a variation on the theme. The call out box on the left side, which is page 6, is a call out box that just kind of brings it home in talking about examples of people making improvements. And this is something I think that you can all benefit from as you read it and as you think about it and apply it to your own team as you work through these scenarios each week. All right. 5-step method, managing, and then it goes page by page. It gets into the steps, the steps, and then it gets into the 7-step stage of problem solving. I like the table that they put on page 16 and 17 because it has it written down in an interesting way. What's your goal? What's your output? And what are your critical checkpoints for each step in the process? I like this. I think it's very clear. And then, of course, it gets into more detail in, what is the project? Why did we pick it? And page by page by page, cause analysis, solutions, results. A word of importance on standardization. When you engage in your team activities, you're not really working for a company. You're learning about the various tools of team building, problem solving, and you're using them in some meaningful way to give you some practice in effective team participation and leadership. So it's interesting, but when we come to step 6, which is standardization, I remember we talked about my student who had Land O'Lakes, the cheese factory down south of our area. And the, the causal situation for their waste was leaky valves and leaky joints and whatnot, and water, which demonstrated leaks, which cost them money. But when you're working in that kind of setting, you can imagine that they will say, well, how are we going to do so that we don't continue to have these problems? Standardize it. What are we going to do to ensure that the things that you've done in this problem solving process changes our standard operating procedures? But in a class like this, I mean, let's say that you want to help a nonprofit and you're working with the homeless. Good luck on curing the issue of homelessness or drug addiction or cycles of poverty. These are huge topics, and if they would be easy, we'd have fixed them by now. So typically in the 7-step method to problem solving, when it comes to step 6, which is standardization, I just have you acknowledge it and move on. So you know. Not that it doesn't come up as important when you're talking about team building problem solving within a company. All right. Um, then they get into this is a kind of a cool one, and here again, I never really saw this written this way, but I think that it's always very interesting. The PDCA cycle: plan, do, check, and act. Plan, do, check, and act. And so I think that it's when you e- every time that you interject some reflection, good things happen. What did we learn here? What did we analyze? What did we discover? And when you do that, this allows you to act with a great deal of confidence. All right. Because somebody in the management team is going to ask you about it. Well, did you check? I mean, it's the old, my lawnmower doesn't start. Well, do you sure you have gas in the tank? Hmm. So it's check. All right. Then it gets into the 16 improvement strategies. They're all listed there, which I think every one of them is important and critical. Finally, as the chapter comes to more of a close, what you're going to see is that, once again, they urge you to collect data, do research, test your hypotheses, analyze causal situations, and do your data collection in a comprehensive way. The challenge, of course, is um, it's not just about data collection. That's only the first step. It's taking that data and making it useful information so that senior management can make strategic decisions and make them with a sense of uh, confidence. So that's what is all in these last chapters. So let's see here. Identify constraints, strategy making, plan and making changes. Again, it gets into talking about the stakeholders and always important. Filling the use of time, localize recurring problems, describe the process, set boundaries. These are all the strategies that will help you uh, address these issues of reducing sources and the strategies that you use for problem solving. So that is the end of chapter 5. Um, and I think here's again, it's there's a really nice, this last one is strategy 16, design experiments to identify relationships. It's on page 62. What I would do if I were you is make sure that you look at that and study it and use it as a check grid to check how you've processed through your work together as a team. Good thing to do. All right. Then they've got a simple design experiment and making popcorn. And I think it's good. I think it's nicely laid out. All right. Um, good stuff. So that is Learning Plan 5, improvement plans. And I think this, as people talk about it, is where the rubber meets the road. That's great. You got your arms around this problem, and I see why you took it on. But what are you suggesting? And what strategy are we going to take to address it and fix it? So, thank you so much, and I'll talk to you again soon.